The imperfect tense in Spanish is a past tense that describes ongoing or repeated past actions, descriptions, time, age, weather, and mental states. By asking what was happening or what used to be, we're saying an action in the imperfect past. Unlike the Spanish preterite, which has many irregular verbs, the imperfect is far simpler due to regular conjugations and only a few irregularities. Spanish verbs have three infinitive endings: ar, ir, and each one has its own pattern in the imperfect. To form imperfect verbs, take the infinitive, drop the ending, and add imperfect endings per the type of verb. Let's take the verb hablar, to speak, which ends in ar. To conjugate it, take the infinitive, drop the ending, and add the imperfect endings. Hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. In this case, one conjugation is borrowed twice, hablaba, so context and subject meaning will show the difference. Also, the conjugation for nosotros has an accent to keep the stress on the original syllable, as it is in every other conjugation. In the imperfect, the words mean was or were speaking, because the tense is about continuous actions in the past. In English, the tense is formed with to be plus a gerund, but in Spanish, the imperfect is sufficient in showing the same meaning. Now, let's see verbs that end in er and ir, like comer, to eat, and vivir, to live. For such verbs, the endings are borrowed, so they will be the same. To conjugate them, take the infinitive, drop the ending, and add the imperfect endings. Comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comíais, comían. Vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivíais, vivían. In this case, the conjugations have accents, and one conjugation is also borrowed twice. After learning regular conjugations, we can see irregular verbs, and in this tense, there are only three: ser, ir, and ver. None of them have stem changes, so we simply memorize them. Era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Now, we can see some sentences, which in the imperfect show habitual and ongoing actions, description, time, age, mental states, and weather. Cuando era niño, jugaba fútbol. Yo estudiaba cuando llamaste. La casa era grande y vieja. Eran las 3 de la tarde. Tenía 10 años. Quería ir, pero no podía. Hacía frío y llovía. As we can see, every action is seen as ongoing in the background, so the imperfect doesn't say when an action ended. In comparison, the preterite is about complete events, but the imperfect is about ongoing actions that were happening during something else. This difference is important because Spanish uses verbs that are often said many times in the imperfect, so we need to understand them. In my previous video, I talked about the Spanish preterite, and two verbs that I specified were ser and ir, which take the same form and show completed beings and movement in the preterite. However, in the imperfect, they have different forms and functions. Ser is used for descriptions, background, and identity, expressing actions as being, like in era alto y simpático. On the other hand, ir is used for repeated and continuous movement, meaning used to go, or was or were going in the past, like in íbamos a la playa en verano. The key idea is that ser expresses a state of being, while ir is about a habit or action that was happening in the past. By understanding this difference, it allows us to see the function of other verbs, like tener, to have. In the imperfect, tener means had or used to have, showing possession, age, and conditions. So it's about ongoing possession or state, like in tenía un coche. I had or used to have a car. Tenía 10 años. I was or used to be 10 years old. Tenía mucho dinero. I had or used to have a lot of money. In comparison, tener in the preterite works differently because the verb's function means got or received, showing a momentary event, like in tuve un problema. I had or encountered a problem. Tuve una idea. I got an idea. When looking at ser, ir, and tener, the use of the verbs can let us differentiate the two past tenses, and this way, our Spanish speech will sound natural. An example of that is cuando era niño tenía un perro e iba al parque todos los días. Un día fui al parque y fue muy especial porque tuve una experiencia increíble. The last thing to note in the imperfect is saber and conocer, which I also showed in the preterite video. Saber means to know facts, and conocer means to be familiar with ideas. While the preterite changes the meaning of the verbs, the imperfect keeps the meaning. So, saber describes ongoing knowledge, and conocer explains ongoing familiarity in the past. In essence, the two verbs have no change, so they describe existing knowledge. Sabía la respuesta. Sabía nadar. No sabía nada. Conocía a María. Conocía bien la ciudad. No conocía ese lugar. In general, the imperfect makes the verbs describe states as they do in the present, but the preterite changes them with the beginning of knowledge, change, or event. So, this is how the imperfect past tense fully works in Spanish.